everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, the cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and the co-director of Stripped.
And this week's hour of comics advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk about your Eisner nomination.
Hey, pretty fun. Fun
indeed. Dave Kellett, my co-host, the person that I personally co-host this show with, is an official Eisner Award nominee for Best Humor Publication for his book, Anatomy of Authors, and I couldn't be more tickled pink.
Anatomy of Authors is, it's so fun to have that happen because who cares what happens after this? Like, it's just, it really is, I know it sounds cliche, but it's delightful just to be nominated, you know? Because, like, I know I'm going to lose out to some book from Image or something.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know it already, Brad. It's okay. I know there's no way I'm going to win, but it's delightful to be just in that mix for a year. It's fun.
It's an honor to be nominated, I know. Do we know who the other nominees are? Do I know who I have to start preparing my character assassination against at this point?
We do not, because here's a little podcasting secret. Brad and I are podcasting in the unique window where I've been notified that I've been nominated, but it's not yet been publicly released. So
right.
I mentioned it to Brad just because we were recording this show weeks ahead. Brad can keep a secret. I'm not speaking out of school.
Yeah.
Cut to the Eisners immediately revoking my nomination on hearing this.
You failed to keep it a secret.
So we do not yet know who the other nominees are. No, I do not yet know. And I have to say, Brad, that the timing on this Eisner nomination in the year of coronavirus is a little weird because I've always said, you know that I've said that one of my goals in cartooning is I've always said I would like to win an Eisner before I die, right?
Yeah.
That's always been my phrase that I've said to myself.
Right.
And this year I'm like, not now, Eisners. This is not the year.
This is not the year to give me something before I die.
Read
Death
the
is
room.
much.
I'm happy to not be nominated.
Yeah, thank goodness I wasn't nominated. I got years to go before I died.
God, Brad.
But you, on the other hand, this
right
could
in the mix. I'm right in the mix, Brad. Oh God.
be prophetic. You're wearing your mask, right?
I'm shaking a lot of hands.
Yeah.
Kissing a lot of babies, shaking a lot of hands. Yep, it's all gonna be fine. It's all gonna be fine.
Now, they're not doing a banquet, obviously, this year. Have we heard any word on what that award ceremony might be like?
No, I have no idea. So traditionally, as for the folks that don't know, the Eisners are the big award in comics, and they're held the weekend of San Diego Comic-Con on the Saturday night, I think. It's
Saturday night it is, yes.
Saturday night. It's Brad, by the way, also an Eisner nominee, we should mention.
Yes. Now, is this your first Eisner nomination?
Are you setting me up there as a joke?
No, this might be the Mandela effect. I thought you had been nominated in the past.
This is my third Eisner nomination.
3?
So, yeah, my
three-time Eisner nominee.
Yeah, my literature book got nominated, my coffee book got nominated, and now Anatomy of Authors got nominated. So
wow,
all for best humor. So that's nice. And then it actually is a category that I like. Like I'm super chuffed with that category. Like I'll take best humor all day long. And then, again, I say this with a knowing wink as to how comics work. Like, my books aren't sold through Diamond. My books don't appear in Comic Book Shop. I'm not going to win, Brad, just because no one knows who I am. And that's okay. Right. I'm okay with that. Like, it's eventually in my 50s, 60s, 70s, people will eventually know me in the broader comics world, but I'm not that known in terms of, you know what I mean? Like, you put me up against a book from, I don't know, pick a publisher, and they just have a marketing budget that's out the wazoo, you know? So
right. If you're up against somebody from Top Shelf, for example, that they're going to put a lot of steam behind that. But now, in the past, I know that you have put out the PDF of the book for anybody who would like to read it to help to guide their judgment and see if they would like to consider it. Here it is. If you want to read it, if you're voting on the Eisners, are you going to be doing that again? And if so, where can I download my copy?
Well, that's a great question. I would actually like to ask you because I have not landed on an answer yet. In the past, Brad's right. For both coffee and literature, I gave out a free ebook thinking like, hey, no one in the comic book world knows who I am, so here's the free ebook. Check it out. Like, go ahead and have a look.
Yeah.
Do you think, Brad, I should do that? Did that have any
Hell
effect?
yes.
You
Hell yeah,
do?
yes. Absolutely. I think, okay, so two things. Number one, you're going to get a certain a number of people that download that book and use it as intended. In other words, they're like, oh, I want to inform my Oscar or my Eisner nomination vote, and I'm going to take a look at this and see if it tickles me. That you get a certain number of people there. Number two, you'll get a certain number of people that download it because it's a free ebook, and they're going to get exposed to your writing, and you can consider that a loss leader. Now it's up to you and the quality of your writing to say, if you convert them, then they're going to say, oh gosh, this was so good, I'm going to go out and purchase Anatomy of Animals, for example. And number three, you're going to get a certain amount of benefit from it, because in so doing, it's just another way of promoting the fact that you're an Eisner nominee, and that works towards your branding as much as anything else. It's a good way to promote this book and promote yourself as a cartoonist who's getting lauded in this regard. So it does three things that are very important, and that third one, it's the most uncomfortable one, because we don't like talking about ourselves. We don't like tooting our own horn. In other words, you're going to come out and say it once, hey, I was nominated for the Eisner and I'm very excited about it. You might bring it around again a little bit later and mention it, but it's one of those things that you should be mentioning often, but you've got to find different ways of kind of working it into the conversation, so you don't become that guy that just keeps showing up and saying, oh, by the way, I was nominated for an Eisner, pass the salt and see if you can get it towards my Eisner nominated right hand. So finding a different way of beating that same drum is going to be good. So I'd say absolutely do it.
Yeah, and okay, let me ask you this: any downsides to sharing that ebook with those?
No. Okay. Realistically speaking, there might be a small number of people who are getting ready to buy that ebook that are like, "Oh, I'm not going to buy it now; it's free." I think that's a small number of people, and again, for that, I think you consider it a loss leader, a mitigated risk, and go on with your life.
Yeah, and I think as I'm sitting here listening to you, it occurred to me that what I will do is in the ebook, I'll insert a page at or near the end of the book that says, "Hey, so glad you enjoyed the book. If you would like the physical copy, it is among the most pretty books I've ever made. It's got gold foil, it's paper wrap, it's got a bookmark built into it. It's like you've seen it. It is a physically beautiful book.
It's a gorgeous book. Yes,
so, and here's the URL where you can get it, and then just pop some a QR code or something at the end of the ebook.
Super easy.
Listen, you and I both know at tops I'll sell 10 out of that, but maybe. Maybe I will do that then, Brad. Thank you for talking me through that. I think
you should.
Regardless, it is a lovely thing to have happen, and I have to give a shout out to the fantastic colorist on the book, Beth Reed Miller, who did a wonderful job bringing those authors to life. The book, if you're not familiar with it, is basically taking the piss out of different authors through history, as though it were a little bit like a high school biology book, like pointing out different parts of their body or what they're holding or what they're wearing,
right.
and making fun of them. So everybody from Seuss to Shakespeare to Twain to Tolkien, right, is in this book. And so it's fun. So anyway, it's a really lovely thing that book got nominated. And thank you, Brad. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Absolutely. Well, I'm super. And by the way, for the rest of the summer, at least, we'll be referring to you as the Eisner nominated Dave Kellett here on the show.
Oh, I'll be bringing it up in the bedroom repeatedly. So that's that's going to be my go-to for summer.
As well it should be.
But I should mention to everybody at the top of the show here that we still have the special offer going on for Comic Lab until July 4th.
Yes.
If you love Comic Lab, if you get value out of the show, this is an amazing time to join us on the Patreon community, because when you join us on Comic Lab at patreon.com/Comic Lab, on July 4th, if you are at the $5 level or above, you will get 4 ebooks: How to Make Webcomics, the Webcomics Handbook, My Drive Act 1, Brad's Evil Inc. under new management. You'll get the Zoom Cocktails with Comic Lab with Brad and I. You'll get all the shows early. You'll get 50, maybe 60 hours, I think. There might be 60 hours now of pro tips, which is our Patreon exclusive podcast that Brad and I do just for Patreon, which is what exclusive means. And then you will get to ask a question of the show where you can submit a question. Brad and I will try to answer it on Comic Lab. And some folks have found that extremely valuable at key points in their career. So join us at the $5 level on July 4th. If you're there on July 4th, whether you're an existing member at the $5 up level or you're new, as long as you're there on July 4th, you will get the 4 ebooks, Cocktails with Comic Lab, the show's early, 60 hours of pro tips, and ask a question to the show. Brad, I'm angry if someone passes up that amazing offer.
Oh, I don't see how you can possibly pass it up. And I mean, it's got a little bit of something for everyone. In that, not only do you get those pro tips episode, but you get those 2 books as a ready reference. So like if you can't find information on a certain thing, you open up that PDF, do a quick search, and you've got all kinds of reference material to guide you through the next step of what you're doing.
And Cocktails with Comic Lab, we have not yet done it before, but a Zoom call with Brad and Dave suitably soused will be, I think, a delightful hangout for all of us in these weird weeks ahead. So that'll be a nice little a diversion. But anyway, so by July 4th, $4 level, Patreon, $5 level, July 4th, $5 level, patreon.com/Comic Lab. But Brad, look who's walked in the room. Let's change the mics around and welcome our guest to the show.
Wow.
Well, Brad, I could not be more excited to welcome this special person onto the show, and I'm smiling as I interview this person. This wonderful, wonderful human being is my wife, Gloria Marilyn Calderon Kellett. Wow, I've never said the full name like that.
It's not even my name anymore. I don't know why you went back in time and gave me back my Marilyn.
Gave you back names.
My middle name, which I got rid of when I got married.
So my wife and I have known each other since 1991.
Yeah.
Wow.
And have been married since 2001.
Yeah.
So it took us 10 years to seal that deal.
Yeah, it did.
That's not that bad. But anyway, so Brad, we have her on the show. Gloria, as the world knows, is the showrunner, the co-showrunner of One Day at a Time.
I don't know that the world knows that. I mean, but okay.
Is not only one of the most creative and talented and wonderful people in the world. She is also my wife, and I'm incredibly
I had
lucky.
to literally sleep with him to get on this show.
Imagine what I had to do to co-host.
I know. I can only imagine, Brad.
And Gloria's show, One Day at a Time, is currently on the Pop network, correct?
It is true.
That's right. And because a couple things to mention about One Day at a Time, Brad. If you happen to go over to Rotten Tomatoes and check out the overall critical reviews of One Day at a Time, you will see that it's gotten 100% for the last
we
three
were
seasons.
like 98% season 1,
season
and that
one,
just kills
season
me.
1 got 91%.
But season 2 and 3 and 4 are all 100%. So
now now, Brad, by comparison, go look at the tomato meter for Starship Troopers just for fun, just to compare it.
It's still an A. It's all an A, so that's good.
And today we wanted to have her on the show because she, in a rare and super wise move, their show obviously couldn't film because of coronavirus.
Right.
They were 6 episodes in.
We were 6 episodes in, and we had to shut down production.
When they had to shut down because, and there was a lot of flurry of phone calls just to give folks the background. She's like, "How small could I get my crew down to?" And I think Sony said
65.
65 people would be the smallest number of people to make a television show on a set.
A multi-camera television show with a limited cast. We don't have a ton of extras. We have really just a primary cast of 6 and maybe a couple of guest actors. And even then, just with makeup and props and, all of that, 65 was the minimum.
And that's with no quick turnaround testing. That's with no, that didn't really and still doesn't really exist in LA in terms of instantaneous testing. So they had to shut down. And so they pivoted. She and Mike Royce, the very talented other co-showrunner of One Day at a Time, pivoted and are making a animated episode of One Day at a Time. And I think I can say that, right? That's been announced.
That's been announced.
And so the design, the character designs are super cute. The animation company's cranking. All the artists are
unbelievable. This animation company
at home, using audio equipment lent by The Simpsons, right? Isn't it? Or
no, it ended up working out that. So Smiley Guy, I want to give them props. They're a company based out of Toronto, 100 employees that all work from home that are animating pretty much 24/7 to make this happen.
Wow.
We've basically been told that they're doing in 8 weeks what it normally takes 29 weeks to do. So it's really remarkable, their hustle in making it. And from the animatic to, last night we got our first cut of the first animation.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And unbelievable what they're doing. So everyone is, of course, on the same page in terms of expediency and in, approving character designs and set designs, etc. But
yeah,
they are really doing a remarkable job. So
wow.
Have to give them some love. But yes, we got the idea from writers at The Simpsons. They were at one point going to lend us equipment. We actually ended up getting our own box kits and
audio box kits.
Audio box kits. And so then they were outside of, they were placed outside of the actors' homes, and a guy in a van outside was recording them.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
wait, what? Is that true?
Yeah.
There's like a wire running into the house?
There was a guy in a van outside. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah.
My God.
The only two that were remote were Rita Moreno, because she's in Berkeley, and Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's in New York.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Gloria Stefan has her own sound studio.
Obviously, like
Naturally,
go down.
So, but everyone else was a setup that was sanitized for their use. And then,
wow.
Yeah.
So it's almost like those old movies of the FBI guys, doing surveillance in the back of the van, except obviously this was on the up and up. And then they would have a little mobile voice studio, and they'd record the whole thing.
Yes.
That's incredible. So one of the reasons we wanted to have Gloria on the show is because the thought kind of occurred to us based on what you guys were just talking about, was that this is going to be the norm going into the fall season for TV. There's going to be a lot of people looking for animated projects. And if you are a comics creator, and if you had considered pitching an animation project, this is the perfect time to do it, right?
I don't know. I mean, I think generally, yes.
Uh-huh.
I think that animation is something that people are looking for constantly. I would say in this moment, there's so many things. This is the intersection of so many things. Mm-hmm. The first of which is COVID. The second of which is obviously the Black Lives Matter movement. That's very important. And the third of which is there's still a shutdown in Los Angeles, where the majority of production, and New York, where the majority of production takes place. Yeah. So what happens is there's the writers have fired their agents. This is from a while ago. 6 months ago.
Yeah.
There's basically a strike.
Yeah, there's basically a strike going on with agents. Mm-hmm. So this is a moment where work is odd. It's an odd time for everybody. And for studios, managers are doing the work of agents now, and lawyers are doing that work. So I only do this in terms of context because I'm a real truth bomb person, Brad.
Yeah.
So I want to tell everybody what they're up against, not so that they will be discouraged, but so that they know what the fight is, right?
Yeah.
So if you know what you're up against, then you can start to build a plan to enter the field knowing everything. Mm-hmm. So I would say the first order of business is that a lot of writers are out of work, and a lot of them are also thinking about animation. I think you are correct in saying that this is a moment where people are thinking, what can we animate? Because all of the animation companies are working right now. They're the only ones that are still up and running.
Right.
The difference would be that when you go to sell a project, it requires having an agent. Mm-hmm. It or having representation, because nobody has an agent. Sorry. It requires having representation of some form to set up those meetings. Yeah. The representation also is like the first filtration system for studios and networks in terms of
so you don't get
quality
the guy with
control.
One tooth coming in going, hey, I got an idea for
It's some sort of it's a type of quality control. Yeah. Then you also have what are called pods, which are producer only deals that are within the studio system. So, I'm trying to think of like J.J. Abrams. No, he does. So I don't know where Bad Robot is right now, though. Like you think of these production companies of different people. I don't know where everybody's pods are right now.
Well, J.J. Abrams still in Santa Monica, right? But
no. In terms of who is he working with?
I
think he had a deal at Universal. I don't know if he's still at Universal, right? So all of these pods move.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things up in the air. At the moment.
So many moving parts. So, like for example, Amazon, where I just went, that's where Nicole Kidman's pod is now. That's where Jordan Peele's pod is now. But the pods move. Right? They get deals at certain studios and networks, and they're there. But the purpose of the pod is sometimes it's easier to get to the pod than it is to get to the studio.
Okay.
So I would actually urge people to first seek representation. Representation is pretty key. And we can talk about steps for trying to secure representation of some form. The second is and maybe you don't need, you could try to cold call or cold pitch to a pod, but I think the pods might be the way in.
Yeah.
For somebody that doesn't have a ton of experience. So that means do your research. Who is producing BoJack? Who's producing all the animated shows that you like? Find out who is producing those shows.
Right.
And can I jump in? Because I think one of the reasons why a pod will take it, in the same way that this has happened with Gloria's career, is that they'll very often pair up an inexperienced writer with the concept, with the idea, with the pitch, with an experienced showrunner or an experienced writer or an experienced producer to put it together and say, like, you've got the idea, you've got the know-how. Together, you make...
And by the way, and I think this is important to note, when One Day at a Time came about, Mike Royce, who's an experienced showrunner, was attached to the project before I was. Right? So they sat in a room and they were like, Norman and Brent and Mike, three lovely white guys, were like, yeah, let's do this Latino show. Oh, wait a minute.
We're missing something.
Right? And then they brought me on and it was great, right? It worked really well. But part of the shepherding process was Mike showing me the ropes.
Yeah.
So I would say the same is true right now, I think, with creatives. I think that there's a lot of creatives that are gathering right now that are writers that are thinking of writing animation who have experience, who have ideas, but will eventually need somebody to animate or create the character designs, etc., for those ideas.
Right. Yeah.
So is there then a possibility that person who is making the art of the idea, is there a possibility they can collaborate? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe, but maybe not. I think a lot of times people hire people just to make what's in their brain, because I think the thing that people forget with television is it is as though you have suddenly, when you're a showrunner, you become the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company.
Yeah.
Like instantly.
Yeah.
You have 250 employees, you have the budgets, you have all the department heads, they don't just hand that out.
Yeah.
They didn't hand it out to me, and I had done television for 12 years. I wasn't a new kid when One Day at a Time came along.
No.
Yeah.
And even still, I had this lovely babysitter that was teaching me the ropes. So I think people think like, oh, I'm going to go to Hollywood, I'm going to sell a show, and I'm going to be a showrunner. Okay. I mean, maybe.
Not so much, yeah.
Not so much. I mean, probably not. Now, do you hear the stories? Yes, you do hear those stories every once in a while, but I feel like those are the exceptions, not the rule.
Right.
So it's more about being knowledgeable in the quest. So I would think that the first quest would be, who is making the stuff you like? If you are somebody that's a cartoonist right now and you have an idea, I think you first have to look at who's making what you like. Educate yourself about who are the pods that are making what you like. Who are the studios that are making what you like?
Yeah.
First, find out about them. Read about them. Who are those producers? Who are those? Follow them on Twitter. Follow them on Instagram. Get to know the type of work that they're doing. Also, there's a lot of initiatives and programs. I feel like there's probably going to be animation. I think there will be calls to action in terms of reaching out to animation, which I think is very exciting. And then I also think that, unfortunately, we are in a business of branding. And so if you have a comic and you want to sell it with the possibility of it being an animated show, you have to start building your business. You have to start building what they like to do when they are optioning anything, books, comics, an article, is they see how many people liked that. They do research on the engagement that particular piece of art garnered, right? So if you have 200 people, you're at the beginning, but you haven't necessarily built it yet to show them like, oh, of all these things. I mean, that's why like the books that come out and are immediately bestsellers get optioned right away.
Yeah.
Because it's an easier sell for them to tell their bosses. Yeah. They go like, oh, what do you, I always talk about urinal talk. I think that like heads of networks are at the urinal and it's like, Bob, what do you got going on? Oh, well, we just got the New York Times bestseller. Oh, really? Oh, great. Oh, yeah, great. We're going to make that into a show. Great. Okay. I mean, you have to have like, what is the resume piece?
The quick comment.
What's the quick pitch that sounds impressive that guy can say to his boss at the urinal? That is really, I think, what it comes down to.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. In other words, something that's got kind of a proven track record, a proven a readership that's behind it is going to have an easier job.
And then the
and an audience that maybe is underrepresented, I feel like right now is really a time that people are actually taking, for the first time in a long time, are taking stock of maybe trying to represent more marginalized voices. Cartoons are a place that does that very well. So is there something there in terms of, and is that also something as a creator to consider, populating your world with people that look like you and people that don't look like you? I know that also has a risk because a lot of people don't like to be represented unless it's somebody from their own community representing.
Right.
But certainly something to think about when you're creating something.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of this, Brad, I think, and it's worth mentioning because Glow is always very upfront about this, is that the failure to success ratio in terms of how many times you have to throw that spaghetti up against the wall before one sticks. And this, so I'm sitting across from a successful TV showrunner who has sold many, many things, some of which you've heard of, a lot of which
will never see the light of day.
Exactly. And we also, in our social group, we have many, many friends of whom they have Academy Awards, and I know that they had shows that didn't go this season, or like animated shows that didn't go, or this or that, and different friends that like all incredibly talented, all incredibly creative and genius, but for 1,000 reasons that you can imagine in a creative meets business world, the idea doesn't go.
That's right.
And so Glow is amazing in this respect, Brad, in that this last 2 months she's been actively working on, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school to share this with people, with 4 different projects. Wow. Not small projects, 4 different projects, right? And the success to hit ratio was, of those 4, how many? 1 survived.
One survived.
Plus, you've got to ladle so much creativity into each one of those 4 to make to make any one of them viable, knowing full well that, like you said, you've got a 1 in 4 success ratio. But that doesn't mean that you were able to cut back. You had to put your full creative energy into each one of those.
One.
Yeah. It's got to be draining.
There was heartbreak with each one.
There's a project that Mike Royce and I went out with that was so. It's also really funny because I think what happens is at any stage in your career, like I really do feel what Dave says. I had, my Amazon deal started June 1st, and I had so many friends of mine being like, why are you killing yourself with 4 projects right now when you have a deal that's starting? You're about to go to a new home. You're not starving right now.
Yeah.
And I think that I come from an artist mentality of it can all go away in 1 second.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I need to be constantly creating also because it keeps the muscle moving for me.
Yep.
And because I need to be in this space.
But also, I think you have, over the course of the now, 15 years that you've been in Hollywood, seen that all of us need to kind of be like pioneer parents. And what I mean by that, Brad, is remember how pioneer parents would have 15 kids so that 2 kids would survive to age 8?
So dark.
I know.
Yeah.
But they did. They were shooting out kids because they knew 4 of them will go from cholera, 2 of them will go from diphtheria, 1 will get hepatitis. They'll all go somehow. So we'll end up with 2 kids from the 15 that we started with.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how a creative life sometimes has to be.
It's true. I was thinking about, I talked a lot to, I have a writing partner for the project that died that we've been working on for a year with a major studio. And the same day that project died, like we are pulling the plug, this is over.
It's
okay.
done.
It is really dead.
Yeah.
Was the same day I sold something else. And I thought to myself, if all of my eggs had been in that one basket, today would have been devastating for me.
Emotionally so ruining.
And it would have been so ruining, but I could almost say, all right, well, that's done, and my energy now goes 100% into this.
Yep. Now it's time to do this.
And I think that's what it speaks to, is that you have to have a lot of. I think it's not for every artist, but for me, I need to have several things going, because I've seen too many die. I've seen too many die, and it's too emotionally taxing. So having several flames in the fire what is it? I don't know. I'm mixing metaphors.
A number of
it's early. I haven't had a lot of coffee yet.
To be fair to her, though, and not only fair to her, but to be complimentary to her, though, she's also an incredibly creative, incredible workaholic, and so she derives happiness from all these projects.
It's true. That's
transiting through their own life. Like and it's wonderful to see up close.
And I would also say, like, right now, I think that the salve I will give in a lot of truth-telling bombs is that artists that are creating from home, it's such a gift.
Yeah.
There's so many people right now that cannot do their work and have no distraction from all of the hellfire that is happening outside of their window. And it is really a privilege to be able to be an artist in this moment and to be able to turn off the noise sometimes. It's privilege, right? That we can say, I'm going to filter any goodness in my heart in this moment into my art. And hopefully that will make the world a kinder and gentler place.
Right.
And so we have to be grateful for that as well, amid the struggle and amid all of that. It's really a privilege to be able to be working from home.
Right.
So I want to be helpful in the time that we have left in terms of pitching, or in terms of seeking representation, which is just such a slog.
Yeah.
Because there is no one way. I think the most frustrating thing about Hollywood is that there's not a clear path.
Yeah.
Every story is different in terms of how people seek and get representation. But it's also the catch-22, because you can't make any real strides unless you have representation.
Right. So in other words, you're not about to tell us, well, here's the website that you go to where all of the representatives are listed.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So
in fact,
what would
and you can't even send it. This is where it gets weirder too. You can't even send it like to UTA, United Talent Agency, or William Morris,
because they don't read unsolicited material.
They don't read unsolicited material, and also it's like you're sending that to a monolithic mailroom of which the agents never get the mail from that, or the email. So you have to seek out individual agents that maybe represent clients that are similar to you in a way, similar to your writing style. So it's like, who represents, I don't know, the BoJack Horseman folks? Who represents the South Park
even
folks,
for example, the BoJack Horseman folks, right? Like that. I know some of the writers on that staff. Those are writers. They're not animators or cartoonists.
Right.
They write. They're comedy writers. A lot of the Family Guy writers, a lot of the Simpsons writers. Some of those guys are cartoonists and artists, but I think the vast majority are just comedy writers.
Yeah.
And somebody else, the animation and character designs are farmed out.
Yeah.
In other words, it's not as important as the writing. Something that we've said here on the show in the past is that there's a much, much bigger emphasis on the writing, and the art is something that comes in as a almost secondary element. Is that accurate?
That's correct. That's correct. But I think that I would say that if anybody in this time where people seem to have more time, if anyone can do the work of a proof of concept, if you can animate something to show this is what it would look like, this is what it would sound like, it's mixed with music, and that goes out into the world and people respond to it, that does become a calling card and a way for you to approach pods and managers.
Well, yeah, it's going back decades now, but remember how South Park got started with that Christmas card that, was it George Clooney commissioned, or was it Brad Pitt?
I don't remember.
Somebody commissioned it. He commissioned, I think it was George Clooney, commissioned an animated Christmas card, and they produced that Santa versus Brian Boitano animated short. Do you remember that, Brad?
Yep.
Anyway, it got.
I saw it on a VHS of a copy of a copy of a copy. Yeah,
as it got passed around Hollywood. And then they got representation. They got picked up.
That's
South Park got started. So yes, you can break in through some weird, orthogonal means, but you have to come in through the back door.
That's the exception, right?
Your own
Yeah, that's the exception.
Concept,
And so
I'm sure a lot of YouTubers are hoping for that angle. Like, I'm going to animate my own YouTube thing that's 2 minutes, 3 minutes long. It'll blow up big, and then someone will notice me. That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that's what's on a lot of people's minds right now. So in terms of representation, there's no clear-cut way. It sounds like it's a lot of word of mouth type of thing. In other words, you find out people that are doing something similar, you kind of talk with them, who's your representation. And what you're saying also is that in terms of nomenclature, saying who's your agent is not accurate now, correct?
Well, not in this moment because anyone in the guild now, the Animation Guild can keep their Animation Guild can keep their agents, but anyone in the Writers Guild doesn't have an agent right now.
But part of it though, Brad, is that because we've noticed this with people that we've seen coming up through like Upright Citizens Brigade or Groundlings or something. It's like that Steve Martin quote where you have to get so good that they can't ignore you
anymore.
You know?
That's right.
And so, like, a part of it is like if you're going to agents, that's half the problem. Like, in a way, they should be coming to you. They should be coming to you because they've noticed how good you are.
So what are you doing? So what are you doing every day to make people? Because by the way, that's how I got my agent manager. They came to me. I didn't do mailers. I didn't do any of that.
Really?
I put up shows. Yeah. I put up plays, and I kept on putting them up, and I invited assistants. I mean, assistants are also a great way in because assistants tell their boss if they liked something. So I reached out to all my assistant friends, and eventually their bosses came, and that's how I got representation.
Right. Yeah, because I remember back in the day, you were coming out to New York and doing shows. You were going coast to coast, bouncing back and forth.
Self-produced, black box theater.
She was making her own magic, Brad, in the sense that, like, I remember we would spend total like $1,000 on a show, and it was heartbreaking. That $1,000, we're like, oh man,
that was rough. It was,
but it would be black box theater, and it would be amazing black box theater, and somehow by hook or by crook through assistance, she would get like the head of NBC Comedy came. I remember one time. You were so excited
I had so many amazing people come. It was crazy.
Somebody from MTV came one time.
Oh, there was so many great people.
But the thing is, like, she was in LA, which is a big thing. That's an unspoken big thing. Is that she was in LA? New York maybe is also an okay location. But in LA, had access to assistants who in turn had access to bigwigs. You know. And that's how you got your first, and even then, the first representation, it was a stumbling first couple of years in that, like, we're going to try to get you in here, we're going to try to get you in there, and that was, but nobody immediately goes with a big silver sword. You're now a showrunner. You know, you have to put in your time in the trenches, and then eventually people will be like, "What are your ideas? We'd like to hear your pitches."
That's right.
Don't you think? Right?
Yes.
So now so what I'm hearing is the best advice that we can give somebody that wants to be involved in animation as potentially there's going to be more animation on TV and on streaming services. The best advice that we can give people is to do the thing you're doing so well that it gets noticed by the people who are putting these deals together. That's correct. In other words, we're not going to tell people, okay, here's how you load a pitch up. Here's how you.
Well, I can talk about that. I can talk about that too. But I would say there's two ways. I think a lot of times artists don't do the work of sitting down and centering themselves and making a visual checklist of what is it exactly that they want. And I'm a big proponent. I'm not like The Secret or a person that does vision boards, but I do goals lists, and I'm very clear. I have a 6-month, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly adjusting them.
Mm-hmm. Sound familiar, Brad?
Yes. I had to be dragged kicking and screaming, but yes, it does sound familiar.
But I think that artists a lot of times are like, I just want to make art. I think you have to be so specific with what exactly you want. So for me, I think that the first thing you have to do is say, do I just want to make a living drawing?
Yeah.
Because if you want to make a living drawing, you can draw other people's stuff, right?
Right.
That opens up an entirely different world for you.
Yeah.
If you say, I want to make my own stuff, I want to be the writer and I want to be the animator, then that's a different thing. Then you have to do the work of being a writer too.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to do that. You have to break down scripts. You have to
direct animation.
You have to get in there with all of that. I think classes are amazing. I think if there's any online classes that people can be taking in those arenas, I think that's smart. But like for me, I think that the years that I was flailing was because I was like, I don't know, I guess I just want to get paid to write. Like that would be amazing. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful to be. And then I was like, no, this isn't, I don't want to, I'm doing that old white guy's vision. I don't want to do that.
Right.
I don't want to write for people that hate each other. And what? And then I had to be more specific. And the more specific I got, the more my dreams truly came true.
Because you were able to put energy behind those things that were helping you get to those places.
That's right. And I was also able to reframe spaces I was in that I maybe was not necessarily satisfied with. Because the truth is, along the way, you have to work, you have to pay bills.
Yeah.
But if you can reframe that in your own mind to be a means to an end, as opposed to a dead end, then I think that's powerful. Because then you're like, I'm here to learn, I'm here to make money and pay off my student loans, I'm here to, but while I'm here, I'm also doing X for my own heart, and I will leave this situation better than I found it and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, Brad, you and I both have a desire at some point in our careers. I would like to drive into something in television, whether it's live action or animation, right? Yeah. That'd be a lovely dream for me, but I haven't yet put it into concrete terms in Glow's idea of like what specifically I want. It's still nebulous for me. For you would like to at some point have Evil Link exist as an animated show. And so you and I, what I'm hearing Glow saying is we have to be specific of, do we want the idea to go on without us show running? Because that's the most likely outcome, right?
Right.
Is that we partner with somebody, but then a showrunner really takes it and runs the ball down the field. Or do we want to start dipping a toe into television, do 4 to 5 to 10 years of writing so that we could then take Drive or Evil Link as an animated show to wherever, Sci-Fi Network, Nickelodeon, doesn't matter, whatever it is. Or do we want to just draw it and then have someone else write the show? In which case, you and I are probably a little better suited because we have an artistic background, but we're not really animators. We don't really know.
Right.
We don't know tweening. We don't know any of that. I guess it's more specific. Like you and I, who have a desire to see our properties at some point transition to television or to some filmic life. What do we want that to be? How do we want to get there?
Yeah.
And recognizing what shortcomings we have in getting there, right?
Right. Absolutely. Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute and stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, Brad and I are going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
Yeah, because, when you do, you'll get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And an exclusive Patreon post that go even deeper on the Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, no worries.
You can still support the show by rating us wherever you get podcasts.
Leave us a 5-star review and a few kind words.
And that, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
And now, let's talk comics. So in the time that we have left, because I know that we're staring down the barrel of a deadline here.
Zoom school starting.
Yes. One of us has to step away to help with Zoom school. So
yes.
Well, then listen, we've got 2 options. We can put a pin on this because I know we can probably get Gloria to come back at some point. Seeing as how you're in the same house.
No, you'll never see me again.
But what I'd like to ask is because we were spitballing this and I find it fascinating. If you find yourself in a pitch meeting, how do you go about what would be the best way to approach an actual pitch?
This is a great question. Oh, I also in this moment I'd like to plug my free YouTube series Hollywood 101, where I talk about how to be a writer in Hollywood with what I know, which is not a lot, and it's one perspective. But everything I do know is in a 10-part series, and it's available on YouTube for free.
And for those of you that ever listen to Webcomics Weekly or Comic Lab, you know that Brad and I like to pay forward what we know, right, with this show. And that's what Gloria did. She basically said there's no real free resources for somebody living in Iowa. Like, how do I break into Hollywood?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so she made this beautiful 10-part series where she breaks down how to get an agent, how to write the first script, how to get the first script read, all this sort of stuff.
We break down the 1 day at a time script. And I think that one is probably our most popular episode. Mike Royce and I break it down because I think it helps people break down whatever show they're trying to break down by breaking down ours. So, so that's free. Please check it out. No one got paid on it. It was a labor of love. Everyone did it for free just for the goodness of getting knowledge into the world. So I would say pitching, and I talk about this in much more detail in the series. I think pitching, you have to look at it as what is your personal style? What is the thing that you're magic at? For me, the vast majority of my career, my pitching style was, I'm your best friend, we are out for coffee, and I'm about to tell you the best story of your life. Okay?
And that's the mental space that you would get yourself into.
Yeah, and that's how I pitch. So it's like, okay, we meet these two people. Oh my God. So picture, picture Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
And Kevin Hart and I are on a date, okay? And he so it's like you're telling this story, you're infusing it with your enthusiasm, and you're telling a great story, and their ability to jump in and get roped into your story is what will sell it, okay?
Yeah.
Then I did that for a few years, and then people started to get to know me, and it felt too similar, I think. So I wanted to change it up. So then I started bringing in a board. So I would take a big, a big poster board, and I would have Dave make a cute, history of them, for example. I'd have Dave do some cute thing on the computer to make a logo of history of them, because that was a show I went out with. And then I literally cast it. So I put all the character names and the actors that I liked, that I was picturing next to it. And then I had pictures of what I thought the bar would look like, and pictures of Portland, because that was set in Portland. And then I had pictures from my Instagram of like what the friends were like and things that they were doing. And I walk in with that, and I tell them the story, but I have photos to go along with it.
Yeah. Yeah, because
then
now they're visualizing it.
Now they're visualizing even more, and they don't have to look at me the whole time.
Yeah.
They have something else to look at.
Yeah.
Then with this Zoom pitching, which I had to do over the last few months.
Yeah.
People are, I think, fatigued of Zoom, fatigued of Blue Jeans, of Chrome, of whatever, of Chime, of the 500 different
Google
Hangout.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to work with a partner who's more experienced at pitching film. She and I are partners, and she had the idea of doing a PowerPoint presentation. So we actually take ourselves off of video, and we play the movie in various images as we're pitching it.
Oh, wonderful.
So that the 45-minute pitch is every 2 minutes, there's a new image.
Beautiful.
So that was wildly effective.
Yeah.
And I had never done that before. I'm so grateful to her for teaching me that, because it allowed them to look at something else. It allowed them to really picture what we were seeing for each of these moments. And that was really effective. Now, still, I would say the style remained the same. The style still remained, I'm your best friend, and I'm telling you a great story. But some people have different pitching styles, and you can't say pitch the way I pitch, because that might not work for somebody else.
Right.
It's like comedians. One comedian style is very effective for them, but you couldn't ask Jerry Seinfeld to do I don't know,
George Carlin.
Names George Carlin, right, and vice versa. It just wouldn't work. But when you pitch, do you leave any paperwork with
Never.
them? Never. Okay.
Never.
Don't leave a trace.
You don't leave anything.
Do you send any paperwork ahead of time?
No.
Okay.
Why not? You're answering very emphatically. Why not?
Because you're giving them your IP.
Right.
You don't want to leave them with your IP. Somebody's taking notes. Somebody's taking notes during that pitch, and they're putting it in their own words, but you don't want to leave your words and your work and you don't want to leave that with anybody. Right. Never.
It's that concept of scarcity coming back once again. Anything that you want to sell, it has to be somewhat scarce.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then do you, is there a Q&A period after your pitch is over?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes they will interrupt you during the pitch to ask questions of clarity.
Yeah. Do they ever buy it in the room?
Yes.
Is that the best feeling ever?
It's great.
What is the most likely outcome of most pitches?
They go nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And they never call you again.
on average, to sell a pitch, how many places do you have to go to pitch it so that you can sell it to one of them?
Oh, that I don't know. I mean, that
more than 5, more than 10.
I don't even think that's a numbers game. I think it's like if it's the right buyer. I think what you.
Well, can I answer for you though? Because over the course of your career, you've pitched on average. Because I think this is helpful to people.
Well,
to sell it to one place, you had to pitch it to usually 6 to 8 places so that ideally 1 and hopefully 2, so there's a bidding war, would be interested.
That's true, but I think that depends on the thing. Like with the movie, we did that because there were 8 different places buying movies.
Right.
For TV shows, it's less, right?
True,
for TV shows, you're pitching to... I think this is where the representation becomes important. Because to even get the meeting to pitch, it needs to be somebody who's buying that type of material. Like... And
the only people who know that are usually representatives.
That's right. So it's like, you're not going to go to CBS and pitch Breaking Bad, even though that's an awesome show. They're never going to make it, right? That's not their brand. So I think it's also being very aware of the landscape. And I think that people need to also read the trades to understand the landscape, because oftentimes you need to work in partnership. I think also that a lot of people put too much on their representation. They also need to be doing the work of knowing and pushing their representation to say, so-and-so just bought a project like this. Why am I not going to speak to them?
Oh,
I'll look into that. Right? Like, they only know what they know too, and it's not everything. So it's a lot.
Yeah. And then I think watching you give talks to 20-somethings and 30-somethings, the similarity that I see between what Brad and I see with younger cartoonists who are like, I'm going to go to Marvel and they're going to buy my Spider-Man book, and I'm 21 and I'm going to get to write Spider-Man, is very similar to what I see 20-somethings and 30-somethings coming up to you being like, I just got the greatest idea and I just need to get my foot in the door, and then they're going to buy it. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that to get into the NBA, there's a lot of work in junior high, in high school, in college, in post-college gameplay to get into the NBA. And that you can't just be like, I'm going to be Michael Jordan, and now I am. I'm Michael Jordan.
Well, I always talk to young people in terms of lawyers and doctors. So it's like, you can't graduate college and go, I'm ready for surgery. I'm ready for surgery. No, you're not. You need to go to med school for 8 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what it is. People have to put in the 8 to 10 years. For the most part. Are there the people that slip through? Yes, there are. And that is an exception. But for the most part, even the people that slip in, even say Alina Dunham, who was very young when she made Tiny Furniture, which was a very brilliant film, she still had Judd Apatow. She still had, right? Like, that just what became her calling card. And then she had somebody else to shepherd her through the process.
Right.
So that's an exception. Like, for the most part, people aren't getting shows right out of college.
Yeah.
They're not.
But even there, Tiny Furniture was, again, like South Park, or again, like the YouTube stars that like get so good that they can't ignore
That's right.
you.
She was so specific.
Couldn't ignore her.
Well, that was the thing too. I think, and in going back to sitting with yourself as an artist and determining what you have to say, I think Lena Dunham in that moment was so specific. It was such a specific take from a young girl who we hadn't seen in that way in a long time, and putting herself in situations we had just never seen privileged white girls go through, right? Like very bald and naked, and it was provocative in a way that we hadn't seen in that moment. So that put her on the landscape, and that's kind of the people that break through. I think are ones that are saying something very loudly in a moment when people are ready to hear it and acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So we can't control that, but what we can control is like sitting with. I mean, before I make anything, I sit in kind of silence. And I try to really think about, what do I think I have to contribute? What do I think I have to say? And how can I go about doing it and saying it?
Yeah.
And letting that marinate until something, bears fruit.
Can I ask a question? Maybe Brad has one last one, but can I ask a question that I think is true, but I don't know. I'm going to ask you. When people buy a pitch, in a lot of respects, are they also mainly buying you? In you know what I mean? Like, are they buying the artist? Like, I know this person's work. I know what they've done.
Sometimes. What I have found, because I have just entered feature films, I've just started that. That's a new world for me. I have not ventured into that world. So far, not a fan. But in television, I definitely feel like people are buying me.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like when I go to a pitch, like CBS, I had a relationship with CBS where one of the heads there was like, bring me whatever, I'll buy it. I just like you and I like what you have to say. And that was a really special relationship. But that was, I had worked on CBS shows for 7 years. I had built relationships there so that they really knew me.
Right. They were
with
familiar.
features. I thought I was going to come in with this Latinx movie, and I'm killing it in the Latinx space with television.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do it with movies. They couldn't have given two shits who I was.
Really?
No, they didn't care. They did not care at all, because in movies, the writer is not king. The director is king. In TV, the writer is king.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So that was a good bit of humble pie I got to eat there. We don't care.
That's why we always hear that line that's always a punchline that I never understood, which is when an actor says, "Well, what I really want to do is direct." That's where that's coming from, is that directors are power. Yeah.
Power.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The other funny line, Brad, that it's related to
That's why I started directing too.
But I always thought it was funny. There's a line in TV that in seasons 1 and 2, the actors work for you, and then in
season 1 they work for you. Season 2, your partner. Season 3, you work for them.
Yeah.
But Brad, last questions that you might have.
Not on my show. They were always
pitching
partners.
or on television or on approaching animation for Glow.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not sure so much a question, other than what I'm hearing is a lot of this it has to do with, you mentioned branding right at the top of the show. And a lot of this has to do with kind of understanding, if you don't understand what your own brand is, taking some time to think about what that is in terms of what you want to do, what you hope to achieve, and then doing the things that reinforce that brand. Is that an accurate way of saying that? I think
so. And that's a controversial statement.
Yeah.
Me saying that branding is important. I've gotten into fights with writers about this.
Really?
Yes. I think it's important.
Yeah.
I think it's important because for example, I'll give a quick example.
Mm-hmm.
After the first season of One Day at a Time, so I have been a writer at this point 13 years by the end of the first season of One Day at a Time. When we premiered, we had rave reviews and tons of social engagement. All right. The show was successful.
Yeah.
I tried to get a deal at Sony, and Sony said, "We don't know who she is. We don't know what is she saying? What's her voice?" I had just done a season about my life and my family that was well received.
Right.
For Sony.
Yeah.
For Sony.
For them.
And they were like, "We're just not sure. We don't know." So I got a publicist. Publicists are very expensive. Very expensive. But in that moment, I felt like it was very important for me to make an investment in myself so that I could make very clear who I was as an artist.
Yeah.
After 3 months with that publicist and saying yes to every podcast, every article, every panel, Sony gave me a deal.
Wow.
Because I made very clear to them who I was. Had I not and look, maybe that's more for creatives of color.
Uh-huh.
Maybe that is more for underrepresented voices, because to break through, you have to say, this is why I'm different and special, which...
Yeah,
maybe.
But I see it though as a direct line of making your own magic, of the same woman that I married that did her own plays for $1,000 in West Hollywood, and she would put them up, and we would work those 5-6 nights, getting as many people in there as we could. To the same woman who came to me and said, like, "Hey, do you mind if we invest in a publicist?" Remember we had that conversation? Right. She's like, "This is a big check.
It's a lot of money.
This is a big check." And but we were like, "Yeah, this is a good roll of the dice for the next," because you have to put in the work to make your own career happen. You can't wait for the world to come to you, you know?
I would definitely say that the best thing you can do to be a resilient artist is to pivot. I think that you need to, and also if you're saying like, what's happening out there? No one's paying attention to me. I think you have to look at, what am I doing every day? What am I doing every day for my art and for my business? And because I think not enough people ask themselves that. They're waiting for somebody to knock on the door and give them an opportunity.
Right.
And that's just that's not mostly how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Brad, any last minute questions here, my friend?
Other than, how do we get Gloria showing up every week? Because this has been absolute magic.
Oh, thanks,
Brad.
Brad.
If I ply her with coffee, maybe we can have her.
I'm happy to talk whenever. I really am. I literally live here.
Well, thank you, love.
Thanks, love.
And On that note, I will say you can go check out One Day at a Time on the Pop Network and keep an eye out for the animated show.
Guys, you can check out the first 3 seasons on Netflix. I'm not hating on Netflix.
No. That's right. Oh, yeah.
First 3 seasons are on Netflix. I wasn't
explicitly excluding them.
First 3 seasons are on Netflix. Go ahead, watch it there. Let them have the biggest numbers they've ever had after they've canceled us.
Right.
And then the following 6 episodes are on Pop TV and the Pop TV app. And the animated special will be June 16th on Pop TV.
Ooh, that's June coming 16th? Right up.
Yeah.
June 16th?
Yeah.
That's like
it's 2 weeks.
They're cranking on this. Good God.
Yeah.
Oh, geez Louise.
It's true. June 16th.
So let's pour one out for the poor animators in Canada. Their hands are cramping and they are
killing it.
Fantastic.
Anyway, hooray for my wife. She's the best.
Yay,
thanks for coming on the show.
Hooray. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Oh, that was a fantastic interview. The first chance you get, remind Gloria how much she brightened our day just by being here. That was a lot of information in a very short amount of time.
I am very lucky to have married her. She is my favorite person in the world.
Yes,
and I'm so glad that she came on the podcast. That was delightful.
Yeah.
And we'll have her back again, of course. So if in the future, if you have specific questions, comic related questions that you would like to ask a TV writer or a TV showrunner in terms of how that world is viewed from the other world, then by all means, hold on to that question. You can submit it to a $5 question. We will hold on to it for the next time Gloria is on the show. That'd be a fun one. So,
or just at some point having Gloria in just to talk, answer questions about Dave Kellen, like stuff about Dave Kellen.
No, that is trouble.
That he'll never tell you, but she could tell you for days. That's the show I'm tuning in for.
Dear Gloria, first question. Hi, $5 backer at Comic Lab. A quick question. How many times did Dave bring up the Eisners in the bedroom? Just a curiosity.
Dave still puts his pants on one leg at a time. But when he does, they're the pants of an Eisner winner.
You know what's funny? I was telling my kids last night that there's the Reuben Awards, which is the NCS award, and I was telling the kids that is actually the heaviest award in the arts. It's heavier than the Grammys, it's heavier than the Emmys, it's heavier than the Oscars. It's a huge award, physically huge award. Brad, have you ever seen a physical Eisner Award?
No. Oh, yes, I have. It's like a pewter globe. I've seen one before.
So for those at home, if you've ever seen a kid's participation trophy for a soccer tournament where they're like, little Jimmy was a participant in the soccer team and here's his trophy. Unfortunately, that's what the Eisner Award looks like. It's real small. It's real small. I was shocked the first time I saw it. I was like, oh, well, there's the Eisner Award.
There it is.
But for an award, who cares how big it is? It's the thought of it that matters,
In fact, you want it a little bit smaller because you want to make sure that it'll fit on the shelf right above your bed.
On the shelf, I'm going to do it like Flavor Flav and make a little hole on it so that I can wear it around my neck.
Well, I guess you've learned your lesson about putting trophies on shelves above your bed. You're probably better off putting it around your neck.
I totally missed the reference of the earthquake joke.
Wow, I just dropped that and waited for a reaction and nothing. Got a Flavor Flav. Jiminy crickets. Well, listen, speaking of things that we're super excited about, we also want to take this moment and thank our sponsor, the sponsor of Comic Lab, Wacom, WACOM.com, creators of the Wacom One, which is an amazing portable tablet. You can take it anywhere with you, connects right to your laptop. And as some of our Discord server members have been mentioning, you can hook it up to certain Android devices. Which is something
I did not know that.
Yes. You can hook it up to an Android device. So if you're running, for example, Clip Studio Paint or Photoshop on your Android tablet or phone, you can hook that up through that device and run the Wacom One from it.
I did not know that. I legit did not know that. That's amazing.
I don't know all the logistics. I don't know, I haven't heard a whole lot about, how it is to use, but knowing Wacom, probably pretty darn slick. But I will say this, and I can speak on behalf of Dave and myself. We've both been using ours during quarantine, and it is amazing, especially if you've been thinking about jumping into the digital illustration side. The price point is perfect. And it delivers absolute pro level results. I've been thrilled with mine.
Absolutely. So we are going to say a huge thank you and a shout out to our friends Wacom at WACOM.com, the makers of the Wacom One, and we will see them next week as sponsors of the show. And in the meantime, now is the big opportunity for Brad to say...
You've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, the creator of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com. I wanted to use creator because you've been using that lately, and I used it on the wrong thing.
Your heart was in the right place. You've heard a sentence that Dave has heard many times through his life.
Speaking of phrases I've heard in the bedroom.
Yes. Oh, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot. And my friend, the Eisner-nominated Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/comiclab, so we'll go ahead and say that like Stan Lee, patreon.com/comiclab.
Excelsior!
Fantastic. So when Gloria said, yeah, I had to sleep with him to be on the show, you said, imagine what I had to do to be his co-host. What? What exactly is the... what had to happen? That's terrifying.
Don't you remember? You told me
don't you remember you were there?
You told me you'd never forget.